It's another week, another car review, and mein Gott, another Opel. Check this out, it is a brand new Opel Mokka-e, just rolled off the boat. First and foremost, price and range. This machine, after the rebate, will set you back just north of $61,000. I apologize for my voice, by the way, too much karaoke. And for that, you get a really usable 363 Ks per charge. Now, I think it looks great. It kind of suits the grey sky and this car park industrial look. But what about features? Well, the official blurb says that this car has German engineering, excellence and efficiency, bold design and a rich feature set. Well, let's see if that's true. But before I talk about the car's features, let me just show off the looks. Maybe it's the weather or the car park, but I reckon it looks fantastic, especially in a time lapse with maybe sepia tone or a vignette. Or maybe even a negative, yeah, okay, maybe not, maybe black and white. Oh yeah, but with the clouds going backwards as well. Okay, I'm getting carried away. The bottom line is, I reckon it's a funky, industrial looking machine. It's very German and the interior is the same with dark cloth seats which are heated with red accents throughout the car. You get 3 interior options, all industrial looking, all darker than my sense of humor, but all options get this 10-inch touchscreen display with Apple Android and CarPlay Auto, plus USB charging front and back. And despite jamming all this stuff in, it's not a cramped car, with plenty of room for drivers of up to perhaps 7 feet tall, plus a fully adjustable wheel of steering, and an extendable armrest if you happen to be a praying mantis. Backseat passengers get enough headroom as long as they're not much taller than 6 feet, and legroom's okay as well. As for the boot at 310 litres, it's big enough for 1 metric unit of me, but with the seats down you're looking at more than 3 times that. Plus, the PSC is unexpectedly high at 48, despite the oddly separated glove box, but there is no front storage under the bonnet, as it's packed full of nutritious electric car components. But how powerful are those components? Well, as always, there's only one way to find out. And we are off, and the first driving impression I get is that it's a bigger car than I expected. It feels big, and that's good because the last time I was in Germany, couldn't help but notice that people in Germany are getting big. So if you're a big person, this car might be the one for you. Although the seating position doesn't feel like a crossover. It kind of looks like a crossover, but the seating position is more like a car. You're sitting into the car, not sort of sit up and big, but it's not so low like cars were back in the 80s. You don't fall into it. It's still a relatively comfortable position. Steering is, ooh, nice and light. That's great for parking lots like this, and the pillars aren't too thick either, so you're not losing a lot of view. Although they're not, they could be slimmer, they could stand to lose a few pounds, but otherwise they're okay. First impression is good, let's go with that. And while we're on the subject of space, let me point out that this is a Mokka-e. It is the electric version of a gas burning car called the Mokka. The downside to that, as is often the case with electric versions of gas burning cars, is that there's no front storage. As you saw, there's no fartment or front compartment, because that's where the engine would go in the gas burning version. And another downside to this car, and I didn't want to bring the mood down, but this is the elephant in the room. For some reason, they've given this car a 0 to 100 time of 9.2 seconds. Which for a gas car is fine, it's perfectly normal, not fast, not slow. But for an electric car, they could have given it much more power. As for the model, this is an SRI model, and the good news is that it's the top spec one, and the even better news is that every Mokka-e in New Zealand is an SRI model. So you get things like advanced parking assist, and of course, wireless phone charging. However, my phone, well, if you've seen my reviews, then you'll know that I have a pretty weirdly shaped one that's really long and doesn't really fit anywhere. Also good news is that this car comes as standard with Android, Apple and CarPlay Auto, although it is cabled, and you get a 12-inch instrument display here and a 10-inch touchscreen display here, which is actually really easy to use and fairly fast to respond to the touch. Gives me sat-nav, controls the radio, that sort of stuff, but if I press the E button, it brings up the vital stats, how much electricity I'm using right now, how much regen braking is putting power back into the battery. Right now, I'm using an average of 12.5 kilowatt hours per 100k, which is actually really low. And that might explain how I can get 363 Ks out of a charge out of this 50 kilowatt hour battery. Now supposedly, the official stats is that the car uses about 15 kilowatt hours per 100k. Interesting, because I've seen people on the internet who have these cars overseas and they say they get closer to 280 Ks per charge, not 363 as is the claimed WLTP range. As many electric cars have, this one also has driving modes to suit your driving mood, so if you're feeling sporty, you can take it out of normal mode that it's in now by pressing the drive mode button and go into sport mode. And instantly, already, it doesn't turn it into a raging beast of a thing, but it does give you access to that 100 kilowatts. On the other end of the scale, if you drop it down into eco mode, it turns the accelerator into a giant sponge and it maximizes your range. It gives you as much distance as you can out of that 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. And to go, oh yeah, it's turned into pudding. If you go one step further and press the B mode, that maximizes the regenerative braking, or the power going back into the battery when you slow down. And now with the car in B mode, the car is slowing down much more aggressively by itself and putting that electricity back into the battery bank. One positive to this car, however, is the noise generator. Some of the cars I've reviewed, the noise generators are louder than a Harvey Norman advertisement, but not this one. The noise generator is kind of quiet in the background. I like that. However, what's this thing like out of the city? It's 1.59 tons, which for an electric car is not too bad. See, going around corners like this, seems to handle all right. I'd like to take it out of the city and put it through its paces, and I will, but first, you need to know this important, family-friendly information.
Some important stuff us older folks need to know is driver's seat height, and when it's set all the way down, it's 65 centimeters off the ground. And if you have kids in car seats, then you'll be happy to know that the Mokka-e has 3 ISOFIX points throughout, 2 on the rear seat, which is 122 centimeters wide, and another set on the front passenger seat. But if you'd prefer to throw your unruly kids in the boot, which might be against the law, but hey, I'm not a lawologist, then the length of the boot is around 132 centimeters, and yes, of course I broke my tape measure. As for the 6-speaker sound system, it's not the best I've ever heard, but it's certainly not bad, as you can hear for yourself. But enough of this narrated stuff, it is time to hit the highway. Good morning, it's another day and my voice is fixed.
No, I'm just kidding, that was a voiceover. This is my actual voice. I still sound like the Ukrainian president. Slava Ukraine. All right, let's hit the road. My job today is to take this thing on the motorway to not only see how this handles in the country roads to test some of its features, but also to see if it charges any quicker than the Opel Corsa-e that I had last week. We're now on the motorway, so it's time to test one of my favorite gadgets, the adaptive cruise control, which will maintain the distance of the vehicle in front, but stop me from speeding. Let me turn it on, cruise on, maximum of 100, there we go. Okay, now let's try the lane keeping assist, which I expect to be exactly the same as in the Corsa-e. Press the button, okay, and now I can relax my hands. And look at that, it's keeping me in the middle of the lane. It's not sailing around, it's not nomadic, it's not a bad system. Not a bad system at all. Takes the agony out of driving in the city. So we have 91% charge remaining. Once we get to the Waikato Expressway, where it's 110 k's an hour, I expect that range to drop dramatically. What's my usage looking at right now? 13.4 kilowatt hours per 100 k's. I expect that to hit around 15, 16 once we get to the Bombay Hills, so watch this space. Another cool gadget this car has that the Corsa-e also has is the IntelliLux headlight system. And what it is, and I can use this video that I stole from Opel's website, what it is it's a headlight system where it tapers the shape of the beams using LED lighting as not to blind the traffic coming towards you. So if you're going around mountainous, twisty roads, it'll morph and change the shape of the headlight beam to stop you blinding the other person. It's pretty cool. Not only that, it also has speed sign detection. It's got a little sign down the bottom of the dashboard here that shows you the speed zone you're in, and it uses cameras. Actually, the people on YouTube, thank you for commenting, because I saw that. You're right, it uses cameras, not just GPS. So it will see a speed sign on the side of the road and it will adjust the speed sign on the dashboard to suit. It's a smart system. It doesn't work all the time though, it's not always accurate, but it's a good system. Well, I guess now we just settle in because we've got a good 40 minutes or so before I get to my secret driving road. But first we have to tackle those Bombay hills to see what sort of impact that has on the economy.
And tackling those hills at speed meant the economy did take a hit, as it would in any car, reaching 15.2 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. In plain English, using my favourite slidey calculator thingy, it means you're more likely to get at most 329 Ks per charge if you drive it this way. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, and on the subject of sound...
Okay, and the sound level on this really rough New Zealand coarse chip road at 100 is... Okay, so about what I expected, about 77 decibels. That's not too bad. Not loud, not quiet, pretty normal. Right, now let's see if this thing handles any better than the Corsa E. Alright, first things first, I gotta put this into B mode to increase the regen, put this thing into sport mode to make it feel sporty, and one thing I should really do as we get into our first corner is put the speed limiter on. Now, it's not a rocket ship, it only has 100 kilowatts, speed limiter, but that's still enough to get into trouble. It'll be really interesting to see how this thing handles compared to the Corsa E, because the Corsa E was about 100 kilos lighter. This one's got a bit more weight, but even though it is a slightly larger vehicle, it still has a stupidly low center of gravity. Wee-hee-hee. Actually, that's not too bad. That's not bad at all. It doesn't seem to give up on the corners so easily. Although that steering is really light, so you're not getting the feedback you'd expect from a car that looks as cool as this. It's very city steering. Oh, there we go. I apologize, Opel. I'm going to give you a car back with slightly slick tires. Oh, it's no slouch. It's no slouch. Maybe I've been being a bit too hard on it. It's got reasonable ground clearance and there's a fair amount of suspension travel, but it's not bad. It's not wallowing. And look at that view. Look at this road. It's fantastic. Throwing a great looking European car into some corners. Doesn't get much better than this. And it's all guilt-free. No emissions. Not a single gram of carbon running out the back of this car. Just superb. And that's the end of the road. All right. Now, let's see if I can get the battery down low enough to justify charging it.
So while wearing the kind of grin you can only really get from driving an electric car, I drove to the nearby hyper-rapid chargers capable of 300 kilowatts each in the Bombay Hills, which were getting busy as so many Kiwis are now buying electric cars. But let's see how long it takes to charge this Opel Mokka-e.
Okay, to use one of these things is very straightforward. You simply use your mobile app or swipe your ChargeNet key fob. You select your plug type, in this case CCS, as is most plug types these days. You grab the one that's flashing and you plug in your car. All right, and that's it. The car does the rest. So you can see we haven't used much of the battery, so let's see how fast it charges. And there we have it. We are at 80% full, and that took 25 minutes. So basically, if you were to take this vehicle from 20% and charge it up to 80%, you're looking at about 30 minutes. Now, the good thing about the electricity feeding this car right now is that it is from Ecotricity. It is completely carbon zero certified electricity. In fact, all of the electricity feeding ChargeNet's rapid and hyper rapid chargers is guilt-free. It's all Ecotricity electricity. So why not consider joining up to Ecotricity at ecotricity.co.nz to get carbon zero certified electricity. That means power that's only from solar, wind and hydro sources and nothing else, guaranteed, and no other power company can claim that. ecotricity.co.nz. Let's hit the road. And we're off, getting on the motorway now, and that entire charging session, according to the text message I got from ChargeNet right now, cost me 11 bucks. 11 bucks, which shows me now I have 274 kilometers of range available. That's not a bad deal. If I were to charge at home, however, it would be much cheaper. If I was going to use Ecotricity's EcoSaver plan, then it would cost me about 4 bucks. And that's because the EcoSaver plan lets you charge off-peak all weekend, every weekend, and at selected times during the week. Now, if you were to charge this car using the granny charger that comes with the car, you're probably looking at about a day and a half to charge it from flat to full, so I don't recommend using that method. That's more of an emergency charger for very slow emergencies. What I recommend doing is getting a wall-mounted charger installed in your home, such as a 7 kilowatt charger, which would charge this car in about 7.5 hours from flat to full. Those would typically cost you between 2 and 3 grand depending on how hard the install is, but honestly, it would be a wise investment. But right now, It's time to take this clean electric car and head back to the big smoke.
I spent a couple more days driving this beast around Auckland, working it properly, and I think I'm finally ready to give you my worthless summary on the all-new, all-electric Opel Mokka-e.
And what a busy last few days it's been. As you can hear, my voice is coming back. That's fantastic news. I've been driving the car around for a few more days. I've got a real good feel for it, and I've created a list of pros and cons. Oh, sorry, don't mind my passenger there with a strategically placed certificate. I know it's not very Kiwi to congratulate yourself, but bear with me here because I don't win very much. That is a Sustainable Business Award that Ecotricity won in part for these corny electric car reviews that I've been churning out. Well, I'm just blown away. I'm absolutely blown away. And if you'd seen me on stage, I was actually shaking because I was not ready for that. So thank you all that have supported me in these electric car videos and supported Ecotricity. Really appreciate it. If you haven't considered joining up, then do so at ecotricity.co.nz. Honestly, it's freaking sweet. I use them. I'm sure you want to as well if you want to cut down your carbon footprint. It's freaking sweet. Okay, pros and cons about the car. Let's start with the cons. Number one, being there's no spare tire, and I know this is a common complaint. Most electric cars these days don't have spare tires. They just come with a tire repair kit, like a pump and a can of goo, which does sound like fun on a Friday night, but what I really like is an actual space saver tire. So if you are concerned about that, as I am, I'd recommend going and buy a second-hand one that fits, get a tire jack, and you'll be set for life. Complaint number two is the acceleration. Unfortunately, it's not a fast car. The 0 to 100 time is 9.2 seconds because it only has a 100 kilowatt motor driving the front wheels. And at 1.6 tons, it means it takes a while to get to 100. And don't get me wrong, it's no slouch. It's the same acceleration as the gas-burning version of this car. But when you think of electric cars, you probably, like me, think acceleration, and this car just doesn't have it. The acceleration just doesn't match those epic looks, and I love the looks. And the third complaint is if you have your steering wheel set fairly low, which is what I like to do, you're going to lose part of your display because the steering wheel obscures part of the instrument cluster. Unfortunately, that means I have to have the steering wheel set higher than I'd normally like right now. And my last complaint is that you cannot tow a single thing with this car. You can get a tow bar installed, but it's only for bike racks. You cannot use it to tow even a garden trailer. And that is it. That is my list of 4 cons. The list of pros, however, outweighs the list of cons, and that's always a good thing. The biggest pro for this car being space. It's a decent sized car. It's kind of like a TARDIS. It's deceptive. You think it's just an average sized car from the outside, but inside there's a fair amount of room and a lot of boot space as well. Number 2, it's a stupidly safe car. 5-star safety rating. Honestly, it's got it going on. It's also got emergency braking. If a pedestrian or cyclist walks in front of the car, boom, it'll slam the brakes on, stop any injuries happening. And the next pro is the warranty. It has an 8-year or 160,000 kilometer warranty on the battery alone. 8 years. That means by the end of 2030, this car will still have a great battery in it, guaranteed. And the last positive has to be those looks. What a striking looking machine. And I know looks are subjective, so you may disagree, but this is my video, so you're wrong. It's a great looking car. I would own it for the looks alone, even if I wish it had just a little more power.